Hi everyone. On this video I'm going to be talking about how unresolved grief for a pet can impact your life for years and years later. One story that I always tell my clients, whatever they come for, is, well, I ask them the question, can you imagine why a goldfish would lead to a man having 4 marriages? Okay, true story, not my client, a colleague's client. We never discuss names or anything. It's a really good example of how not being able to grieve for a pet properly can impact for years and years and years. When this man was 7, he had a goldfish and he'd won it at the fair back in the day when you used to be able to do that kind of thing. And he brought it home in his plastic bag and he put it in the bowl, and he loved this fish and used to come home from school and feed it and look at it, and I don't really know what you would do with the fish, but he loved it. And he came from quite a fractured background, so there was always people moving in and out of his house and things like that, and this fish was the only constant thing in his life, and he loved it. And one day he's at school and the fish dies, and his mum, thinking she's doing the right thing, goes and flushes it down the toilet and goes and gets him a replacement. And everyone agrees that's the best thing to do because they don't want him all upset and they think he'll never know the difference. He knows immediately that is not his fish. And he's getting all upset, which is what they're trying to avoid. And where's my fish? And what's this one doing here? And he's making, a load of noise. He's crying. He's upset. And the dad, who's been at work all day, puts down his paper and says, for goodness sake, you were at school, all right, the fish died, your mother flushed it down the toilet. You know what women are like. You never know what they're up to when you're not there to keep your eye on them. Everyone knows that. And he goes back to reading his paper. Nice, sympathetic man. So when this lad is 7, and when he's old enough to have a girlfriend, he finds himself, he's going through their bags and their pockets looking for evidence that they're up to no good. I mean, they didn't have mobile phones and on social media, but he's convinced that, his girlfriends are up to no good, because everyone knows you never know what women are up to when you're not there to keep your eye on them. Keeps going, and then eventually, somehow, he gets married, and instead of getting better and him feeling more secure, now what happens is he just feels worse, and he's phoning up his wife at work saying, you told me there were no men there, and I can hear a man in the background, and who is that? And eventually he became so unreasonable that she left him. But what this did was confirm what he thought he already knew. I knew she was no good. She's left me. Same with wife number 2 and number 3. And he gets to fiancé number 4 and he realises that none of his mates seem to have this problem. So he goes to see a therapist, but not because he thinks there's anything wrong with his behaviour. He doesn't understand why only the bad girls, as he put it, found him so attractive and he couldn't get himself a good girl. And it was during the therapy had a light bulb moment, and he realised that the child, or the little self, had taken what his dad had said completely out of context, and his adult self was able to rationalise that his dad hadn't really meant that at all. And he was fine. As far as I know, he's still married. So you have to be really, really careful with language. Another example is when people say, or they tell their children, that the dog is really poorly and we're going to have to put him to sleep. And you think that that's the kindest way to say it, but actually I've had clients that come that can't sleep and haven't been able to sleep for years, and it's gone back to a time when they were told that their pet was being put to sleep and had gone to the vets and not come home again, and then they'd realised they died. So some part of their brain or their mind has connected going to sleep with dying and not coming home. So that's another example of how you have to be really careful about how you explain things. You're trying to be gentle and you're trying to be kind, but sometimes just really be careful that the brain or the mind doesn't interpret it in that way. Another one, using the word loss or lost or losing. I lost my pet. He's lost. I feel your loss. It's all meant to be in a really good, kind way, in a gentle way of saying dying. But what happens is the brain then thinks, well, if it's lost, maybe it'll be found again. And it makes it far more difficult to overcome the grief, because there's always that point of, did I see him? Was it him on the walk? Even though logically you know it can't have been, your brain is always looking because you've told it that you had the loss. So this is just a reminder, just be really careful about how you explain to children or even to yourself, because we are always listening to our own language. And if you keep using expressions like that because you're trying to be gentler or say it in a more sympathetic way than just being blunt and saying that he died, it can have an impact later on. So these are just a few examples of things that have come up in my therapy room over the years. And yeah, just to say, be careful what you say, because you are always listening, and so are the people around you. There's going to be more about language in one of the other videos, so have a look out for that. Bye.